From the Cold Formed Steel Buildings Association, this is Cold Formed Buildings Made Easy with your hosts, John Cosper and Lauren Toole.
Hello and welcome to Cold Form Buildings Made Easy, the podcast produced by the Cold Form Steel Building Association. My name is John Cosper and my co-host is Lauren Toole. Today we're talking with one of the founding members of the Cold Form Steel Building Association. It's a lady that Lauren and I are both familiar with. We both worked with her in our past careers. I'd like to introduce Shannon Linker. And Shannon, rather than going through a biography here, I'd like to just introduce you and just tell us about your background in the building industry.
Sounds good. Thank you, John, and welcome, Lauren. I started working in the steel industry for a metal roofing manufacturer over 40 years ago. So it's been a while. I spent my early years in a sales and customer service focus. And then the second half of my career, I actually worked in sales leadership. Most of my experience was in the commercial industry, and I learned a lot along the way working for a couple of manufacturers.
How did you get started in cold form?
Great question. So when I first was working for a manufacturer, I learned about cold form, 1980. And the company that I worked for was roll forming C's and Z's, which are also called purlins and girts. And those parts were used for, at the time, secondary framing in different applications. So I had to learn about how those applications worked. And most of those applications in secondary framing at the time went into self-storage buildings, retrofit roofing. And at the time, it wasn't anything that we knew about using cold form for a whole building, which we're talking about a little bit today.
It's interesting with the whole history of cold formed. I did some research on it when I first joined ACT Building Systems. And I mean, it goes back a long, long way. So were people building houses out of cold forms way back in the 1800s. And there was an entrepreneur who tried to sell metal houses made completely out of metal, including cold form members right after World War II. And then there's a hospital that was built, I think, in Virginia. And I don't remember the exact dates on it, but I want to say the 1930s. And they used cold formed as part of its main structure and I think the secondary floor. And when they did some renovations just like 10 years ago, they found it did not need any upgrades or anything like that when they were updating the building.
It is interesting. That's a good point, John. I looked at some history too when I was taking a look at some information going way back. And I think I read late 1700s. Steel came over from Great Britain and it was used in applications that really were pretty stout buildings in the beginning that are, like you said, still standing today. But there's so many different applications, and it's exciting to see that steel is now being more widely adopted. Back then, it was pretty specific uses. And as I said, in the 80s, we saw the secondary framing being used quite a bit for self-storage, but we also started to develop engineering that would allow us to make a whole building.
With the cold form buildings that came over from Australia about 25 years ago, that's kind of the focus of the Cold Formed Association as well as the business that we've all been in for the last couple of years. But what was it about this style of building that caught your interest?
I was working for a manufacturer that at the time was doing in-house design, and it was really cumbersome. Every time there was an application that came up, we had to go to the drawing board, have the engineers work on it, figure it out, even with a simple self-storage building. So when ACT came to market, and actually one of the companies that I work for actually did use ACT for the programs that they went to market on, the program allows for that self-user design, not having engineers involved. So it really streamlined the design process. For us, it was really a great opportunity to do more buildings faster. And so we quickly adopted the brand, rebranded under the ACT software with another building name and took it to market. The second company I worked for did the same thing. So there are multiple manufacturers now that offer the ACT software under different brand names. And I worked with two different companies that did that and launched it effectively and grew very successfully with the automated software. It was really exciting.
What is the biggest improvement you've seen over the years with cold form?
I would say just that type of automation, not only having the software automate the design and the applications that are available, but also making it user-friendly. So it's not a hard software program to learn. It's easy for a customer or a builder. Customer could be a retailer or distributor, but also builders to jump into the software, learn it. Once they've gotten over the hump of the initial learning phase, it's really easy and intuitive to use. So I think that's been one of the most beneficial parts of using that type of application.
As someone who's helped to launch cold form building programs and manufacturers and seen it grow successfully in two different places, what would be some of the strategies you would implement if you were consulted with a new manufacturer or even a distributor to launch a cold form building program to train out their sales staff as well as to brand the product?
Well, first, I would say thinking about not limiting it necessarily to specific users. Early in my career, we went out to market with the idea that only certain types of companies could handle the software, could work with it, and launch it effectively. And we stuck with builders, thinking, well, it's got to be a contractor, somebody that understands how to build. But really, as I said earlier, the software is very intuitive. It's well written. The engineering behind it is really solid. So it really gives us an opportunity to look at a wider audience. And as time marched on for me as a leader using the software and trying to get it to market, we found avenues with a variety of different customer types. And so I'd say the strategy for a company would be to think about all of the different ways that you want to help your customers grow their business. And this is just another tool. It's a way to help a company expand. I would also say that the caveat there would be make sure it's somebody that's committed, that they want to do this as a long-term business opportunity and use it as a strategy to grow. It does take time to get started. And I think once they're over that learning curve, that hump, working together with the manufacturer that's supplying the tool to them to really grow their business effectively would be important. I'd say another strategy to think about is beyond the traditional companies that would buy the products from a manufacturer would be to think about affecting the design community, committing resources and people that can go out and help train, help educate, making sure that there's enough knowledge being shared that when a building gets to a point that it's hitting someone's desk for approval, there's knowledge about what they're looking at. And that's been a bit of a challenge, I think, in the industry, is not understanding that cold form is a solid design, that it's available. And so I think educating the design community is another strategy that we need to tackle and companies out there can help with.
That's certainly a thing that I've observed, particularly on social media sometimes when there's videos about cold form buildings, and you'll see some red iron dealers go on, or erectors, guys who have built red iron for years and years, and their initial comments are, this can't be strong enough, this is crap, you shouldn't buy it, it's going to blow over immediately. And what they're not taking into account, and what end users I think should know, as well as people who are thinking about getting into cold form, these buildings have to meet the same exact standards that a red iron building would. Depending on where the location is, it has to meet the same wind codes in Florida. It has to meet the same seismic codes, where that applies. It has to meet the same heavy snow loads in places where there's heavy snow.
No, that's a great point, John. And I think that designers maybe initially at the onset with just the initial information, not seeing the actual buildings laid out on drawings, may assume that, well, gosh, this secondary purlins, it's meant for subframing or some type of, ancillary secondary framing, when in fact the buildings can be built with certain techniques that make the parts stronger. And so I think that's where the education comes in. And some of that might be attacking code authorities and just getting the information out to the right folks that can help us really get that understanding more broadly accepted.
What are some other challenges that you've seen over the years with cold form?
I would say maybe that we probably diluted the knowledge by rebranding, the general knowledge of just what a cold form building is, how the parts come together. Rebranding, we've got a lot of different company names pushing different designs and information. So I'd say we've probably diluted the message a bit, but overall, I don't think there have been any other challenges, Lauren. We've seen significant growth. We've seen good performance in buildings. When there is an issue, we solve those quickly. I think most of those might be someone missed something, and that can happen in any type of construction. But overall, there have not been failures. There haven't been any real challenges. When we build to code, as John said, and we do what we're supposed to do, we've had some great success.
Shannon, you've been part of the group that's putting together the Cold Form Steel Building Association. You were one of the names that actually came to mind early on when Phil Koster was talking about who should we bring in. He says, we need to bring Shannon Linker in. And I wanted to have your expertise as a part of this organization. Why did you agree to be a part of this group? And what value do you see in having a Cold Form Steel Building Association?
Well, I think, again, back to my point about just how we've diluted the message and some of the early work that was done. I believe Phil and this team, those of us that have been working at it for a while with different companies, different roles, we have good knowledge, but we need to come together and create a forum where we can go out and really educate, make sure that the message is clear about the use of cold form and how it can be adopted to really grow that part of the business more significantly. So I'm excited to stay involved. I retired a few years ago from a metal manufacturer for metal sales, where we had great success with the impact building system under the ACT software, or with the software underlying it. And I'm excited to continue that work and put some effort into industry education and knowledge.
Where would you like to see cold form in the next 5 years?
I would say if we could take about 25% market share from the red iron industry, that would be a pretty significant step forward. That part of the business is, I think that type of design is really where we see the most opportunity. I think that some of the challenges there are that we have to educate some of the right folks that are designing for those types of buildings and really get out and make sure that they see the opportunity with cold form.
I certainly would agree with that. In addition to growing through red iron, there's also the post frame market, the tube frame market. I visited with a number of cold form dealers and manufacturers. There's a lot of attention paid to who else has the software, who else is selling it. And the vision we try to sell them on is there's a much bigger pie out there than just a small cold form pie. Yes, somebody's coming in and they may have taken some of your customers, you may have taken some of theirs, but there's a lot bigger pie. There's a lot bigger. And that's part of where the Cold Form Association comes in, is bringing it under the name Cold Form Steel Buildings and presenting it to architects, presenting it to the code boards, and getting people to realize this is a viable type of building. It has a certain niche. It has a certain fit, and it stretches pretty far from, being a better solution for a larger post frame building as well as a smaller red iron building.
Right. No, that's great. I think that the current environment will lend to us seeing another surge with cold form buildings being an option to red iron in particular. And the reason why I believe that is in the last downturn that we saw, we had a bunch of pent-up demand that happened. We weren't getting steel with tariffs. Offshore tariffs affected the supply chain significantly. And then when we came out of the last downturn from COVID, and when there was so much pent-up demand from the red iron building business that was backlogged, we had an opportunity with cold form to turn buildings around much more quickly. So I see that coming again. I think that as we look forward to what will happen, who knows what will happen with the current tariffs, but certainly buildings and owners that spend money on those buildings are going to be held up for a bit as prices go up and we see things freeze for a minute. But as that demand then comes, as we have a chance to pull that demand in, we'll see some conversions again. And it's a great opportunity because now we are better poised than we were before. If you go back 5-6 years and we look forward now, we've got more companies using ACT software. We've got a lot of opportunity to turn that on in a bigger way.
For the manufacturers that are invested in cold form, I think it's worth bringing up. The three of us were together during that last recovery from a downturn, and we were working together, and we saw that demand. And it's true. If the supply is there, if the material's on the floor, if it's readily available, you can turn a cold form building around a lot faster than a red iron building. In fact, you can design, engineer, and produce a cold form building faster than you can design or even begin to engineer a red iron building. It's just that much faster. It's that much simpler. The software makes it simple, and again, it's engineered to the same codes, but you're churning out a product that is in many ways more cost effective, and it can be on the ground a whole lot faster.
To add, you don't have to have such heavy material to be able to build cold form. You don't need heavy equipment.
That's a great point, Lauren. As we think about how sites have to gear up for a red iron building, oftentimes there's a crane involved, different logistics to make that happen. So with the lighter weight factor of the cold form buildings. We can certainly handle those more nimbly, less equipment, and it's definitely an opportunity as we think about inserting ourselves more into that space.
I was just on a site yesterday and talking with the guy who's getting a building up in Greenville, Indiana, and he was asking me, are they going to need a crane out here in order to get the rafters hung and everything? And I said, this is lighter weight equipment. I've seen people come out with a forklift and you strap it to both sides of the rafter and you make sure the lift is balanced and you lift it up with a forklift. It's that much lighter weight. But again, just because it's lighter weight doesn't mean it's not as strong. It is engineered to the proper codes here in Indiana. That building is going to be here a lot longer than we are. So which is what we want to see.
It's good stuff.
If you could share one piece of advice to someone who's new to cold form, what would it be?
I would say take advantage of the resources available to train on the software. There's a great team of people behind that software that really have an easy way to teach, a great way to support anyone out there that needs the help. And then I would say, other than the Software Supplier Act, maybe talk to the manufacturer that supplied that tool for you. A lot of the manufacturers are really savvy and have teams of people that can help support the effort.
And more of them are putting those teams in place too, which is exciting to see. It's just everybody's seeing the possibilities and they're making the investments and getting their teams on board. And I think we're just going to continue to see it grow in the next several years.
I agree. And I would say keep following this group. So as Cold Form Building Association evolves, we have more information out on the web and social media. There'll be lots of tools and resources to help with that effort.
For sure. We've definitely got a lot of plans for training folks on what cold form buildings are, what the selling points are for cold form buildings and how to erect them. The technology is going to continue to get better. The software is going to continue to get better. And even by the time this podcast comes out, we're recording it here in the spring. It'll probably be out in the summer. There'll be even more advances. And if you go to the website, there'll probably be maybe a few more resources, hopefully. So we're excited to see it grow. And Shannon, we're excited to have you a part of that.
Me too. Well, thank you for your efforts and look forward to more to come.
This has been Cold Form Buildings Made Easy. I'm John Cosper. My co-host is Lauren Toole, and we've been talking with Shannon Linker. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us, and please join us next time on Cold Form Buildings Made Easy.